Hello and welcome to a very special RPG First Look. Now, normally for these, I would say like 80% of the time, an RPG company or a developer will come to me and say, hey, Adam, we have this game, and maybe you would be interested in taking a look at it. And while you do so, maybe you'd like to stream that and kind of get the word out there that we're making this game. And I usually say, okay, cool. Well, like, obviously, here's how it goes. I'll go through it for an hour. We'll talk about the game. I'll look at the mechanics. I might be critical of the game. I might be excited about the game. I might be both, because you can be critical of something and excited about it at the same time. And I will give my honest opinion. We'll do a review, and then people can make their decision on their own. But occasionally, as with, say, Mutant Crawl, right? MCC, as with Zweihander, and now with Fria Ligan's Alien, the role-playing game. Sometimes a game is just like interesting enough for me that I want to look at it, and I'm gonna read it anyway, and I would love an opportunity to do so with you. So what we're gonna do with Fria Ligan's Alien RPG now. Let's lay it out like we usually do. This is not the full role-playing game. This is I don't know what they call it, a quick start, a cinematic pre-release. It's supposed to give you an idea of one of the modes of play. It's a sample of the finished game. It's 168 pages. And I guess from what I've read outside of this, before we actually dig into the game, there's essentially going to be two modes of play within the Alien the role-playing game. One of those modes will be a standard style of tabletop role-playing game campaign. You will be making characters. Those characters will remain persistent. You will play multiple sessions over time, and you will create a campaign of sessions, right? The other mode, which I believe this sort of, as it was pointed out, closed beta kind of covers, is cinematic play, which I think is meant to be more lethal. It is meant to regard the story over the characters, right? The narrative is more important than the individual characters. The characters are likely to expire, as with Alien or Aliens. And it kind of frees you up to make, let's say, stupid choices for your characters, horror movie choices, right? Taking your helmet off on an alien spaceship, opening that door when you know you shouldn't, going off alone with only a flamethrower and a small cat in a box to protect you. So that's, I think, what's got me most interested in this role-playing game, because I don't think that Alien... Well, okay, let's talk about the Alien films. So when we refer to the Alien canon, I assume, and this is more of like a marketing and licensing thing than it is anything else, Fria Ligan, they purchased a license from 20th Century Fox, Disney, basically. They purchased a license from them to make a property based on Alien, to be allowed to call their game an Alien game, in the same way that Fantasy Flight bought the license to make a Star Wars game. Fria Ligan, Modiphius, both have the license for lots of things like Star Trek, the upcoming Dune role-playing game, etc. So you buy a license, and that license indicates what kinds of things you can draw from. So, for example, with Alien, they're likely not allowed to include Predators, for example, or any of the material from the Dark Horse comics, or material from William Gibson's unpublished Alien 3 script, right? There is a subset of material, and I don't know exactly what their license covers, so I guess part of it will be looking at that. But when I think of Alien, I don't actually think of a single type of content. I don't think of a single narrative, right? Because even Alien and Aliens are very, very different. If you say to somebody, we are playing an Alien RPG versus we are playing an Aliens RPG, you're going to get two very, very different experiences, right? Alien is like a slasher movie in space, where slowly everyone in an isolated environment dies off one by one until there is a final survivor, Ripley in this case, who gets to escape the situation intact, or more or less intact. right? Aliens takes the protagonist and puts them in a completely different environment in which the bad guy of the first movie is multiplied many, many times over and becomes a bug hunt, right? It is a sort of military tragedy / large-scale horror movie with lots of guns and rocket launchers and vehicles and what have you. Yeah, it's much more a Vietnam War movie than the first one. What I think is interesting, though, and those for me are the touchstones. Those for me are the touchstones for what makes alien fiction. But I don't know that that's necessarily the case for Fria Ligan. Because there's also, God help us, Alien 3, which is so-so. There's Alien Resurrection, which I think was pretty terrible. And then there's Prometheus and Covenant, right? The far-flung prequel that supposedly wasn't an Alien prequel, and then Covenant, which definitely was an Alien prequel and kind of back references Prometheus to make it an Alien prequel. So there's essentially 6 films that I think make up the greater Alien canon, and they all tell very different stories. Right? You can make RPGs that feel like any one of those things, but I think the big challenge and the thing that I'm most worried about is that Alien, the role-playing game, is going to attempt to be a game in which, yes, there are xenomorphs, and yes, there are pulse rifles, but which of those movies, and which is to say, which of those modes are we attempting to replicate? Now, I think that for one-shots, you could very easily replicate Aliens and the idea of colonial marines arrive on a planet. The planet is infested by aliens. We all know that. There's dramatic irony. We pretend like the characters don't know there's aliens until they learn that there's aliens. Everything goes to shit, and then we try to survive whatever the GM has made up for us to survive, right? In the same way, you could do Alien relatively easily. We are the crew of a spaceship. We all know at the beginning of the game that probably only one of us is going to survive, and we're going to play to find out who is the survivor against this horrible alien creature. Prometheus, or Covenant style play, is we are going to a place to uncover a mystery, and that mystery is tied into the greater alien cosmology, and we may or may not encounter xenomorphs or neomorphs or whatever, right? So they're different modes of play, and my ultimate hope is that the game will give us, and if not this game, the final game will give us tools for doing all of those things, right? Mechanisms for creating that tension, mechanisms for managing it, mechanisms for fighting aliens or not fighting aliens, right? Because you don't fight the alien in Alien. The alien in Alien is borderline invincible compared to the drones that we see in Aliens, right? So I wonder kind of what mechanisms we're going to see. My hope is that there are some, and that it isn't simply the game telling us to play a certain way with some more generic mechanisms. And I'm really curious to see what the big inspirations are for this game. So we're going to dig in. We're going to take a look through what we have in these 168 pages. And we're going to kind of wonder, maybe based on that, what might be coming in the future for the final version of the game, which I understand is going to be quite broad. I think there's like a box set. I think there's a core book. There's knowing Fria Ligan, knowing Modiphius, there's going to be a custom dice set, and there'll probably be some supplements. But in my experience, Modiphius and Fria Ligan don't generally publish like a glut of supplements, which is quite nice. From based on my understanding is they don't tend to sort of drown a game in additional supplements. That's right. Don't forget, there'll probably be a deck of cards. So we'll see. Let's take a first look at Fria Ligan's Alien, the role-playing game. So what I think is interesting about this game from the get-go, and what makes me really happy, is that it's already quite nice to look at. There is a lot of new art. It's not like the... and I credit Modiphius with this very heavily. Their licensed games are not the licensed games of my youth, right? When I was a young lad and I went looking for a game based on something I liked, the art in that game was almost always terrible. It was almost always reused screenshots from TV shows. It was almost always pictures from the movie, right? We wouldn't get anything new because that's less expensive, right? It's much less expensive to just license art along with your licensing of the material, right? To say, in buying this license from you, 20th Century Fox, we are also allowed to use pictures from these movies, and then just go and make your own screenshots and put your stuff in there. So it's nice to see, and honestly, I wouldn't expect anything less from Modiphius in the terms of making new art and making this game look good. Because say what you will about any of their games, they look nice. They look real nice. So this is the cover page. It's a great design. It shows they understand the graphic elements of what make Alien look like Alien. The color choice is interesting because the first Alien movie, this title would be green. This title page would be green. And in the second Alien movie, it would be blue, right? Because there are and then Alien 3, I believe their color scheme was like gold. There's this very intentional choice for those things. I like that it's teal. It's a nice halfway point between the first two. It has a faceless person that we can project ourselves as players into. And then obviously there's the ominous xenomorph hanging before them. And it creates this it's a very nice title screen. And the font, and this is a true thing about Alien, stark white font, massive spacing between the letters. And they've done a great job showing us this here. So this to me feels like a great start. So the game is set up in, I think, 6 chapters. One which is like an overview of the themes and setting, right? Space is hell. Your character, I don't know your character 23. Oh, I guess that's the page on which, okay. So chapter 2 is your character. So this is all the stuff that makes up your character. Your core concepts, your personal stuff, and your gear. Skills, which is the meat of the game's stuff. Combat and panic. That's a pretty good. I like that. There's stress levels and a panic roll in the game. Personally, very curious about this one. There's a gear chapter, which obviously, if you're going with aliens, you need stats for sharp sticks. Bombs, guns, etc. And then what I think is the built-in sort of preview scenario, which is Chariot of the Gods. So let's dig in. Our opening quote comes from Alien. It's Ash. I can't lie to you about your chances, but you have my sympathies. So space is hell. And then it lays out a few things about the game. Now, what I think is interesting here is that it kind of lays out for us what we are expected to know, whether we've played or whether we watch the Alien movies or not. Right? There are things lurking in the shadows, things alien. This is the Alien role-playing game. This is what the game tells us that it's about. You ready? This is what I consider to be its mission statement, and then the mechanisms of the game and the reward structures of the game are going to have to prove this to us, right? This is the Alien role-playing game, a universe of body horror and corporate brinksmanship where synthetic people play God while space truckers and Marines serve as hosts to newborn ghoulish creatures. A universe of body horror and corporate brinksmanship. A harsh and unforgiving universe, and you are nothing if not expendable. Stay alive if you can. So that's pretty significant, right? So I would expect that every game will have every game that we play, every campaign will have elements of brinkmanship is like people trying to outdo each other. It is ladder climbing. It's it's like profiteering, right? Let me look at the official definition. Let's see. I think it's like pushing closer and closer to danger, right? Yeah, pushing a dangerous policy to the limits of safety before stopping, especially in politics. So it's like, it's like people trying to climb over each other, pushing towards the brink, where things are too dangerous. It's what the Weyland-Yutani Corporation does in every Alien movie where they have a chance, right? Where they're like, maybe we can sacrifice this crew. Maybe we can bring these aliens back. So I'm curious what role the players will have in this stuff versus what role the GM will have. I think that this sounds like a GM flag to me, like what players can expect. The phrase about synthetic people playing God, I think, is interesting too, because it sets the synthetics, unlike in Blade Runner, where the artificial people are victims. In Alien, even if they are tools of the company, they still act like they're better than the humans. Ash does it, Bishop does it, though Bishop turns around. David in Prometheus and in Covenant, it's a huge element of like, from his birth, David is like, I'm better than you, right? Weyland, you made me and I'm better than you, you dying old man. He's born, he meets God, and then God dies of old age. So it's interesting that's an aspect here. And I wonder if you're going to be allowed to play a synth, or if the synthetic people, if the androids in this are GM options only. Because it's a role-playing game, I feel like the likelihood is that someone will get to play them, but I almost wish that they weren't that way. Yeah. So anyway, this is kind of our mission statement for the game, and the rest of the mechanisms will play out whether or not that is true. So the Alien role-playing game takes you to the rough and tumble colony worlds of the frontier of known space. It's on the cusp of this unforgiving place that your character must face their demons, both inner and the other kind. The story of Alien is about creators and their creation struggling for dominance. It's about corporate greed and avarice. And it's about how superior firepower and fancy technology aren't enough to protect you from the horrors of the unknown. It's about pushing the envelope and sticking your nose where it doesn't belong. Consequences be damned before they damn you. About humbling man for his own hubris. It's about motherhood and family. About loss and sacrifice. It wrestles with the questions of artificial intelligence and faith. So this, to me, is leaning way more into a broad understanding of the Alien universe and giving you options to choose the themes for that universe from the palette of kind of darkness of Alien. And it's really cool. It's a great start because I think that it does grab a lot of what this universe is about, right? That point about it being about motherhood and family, about faith, about artificial intelligence. It looks like it's going for a holistic approach rather than saying it's an Alien RPG or a Prometheus RPG or whatever. Cool. So as we continue through, more great art, more quotes from the movies, and now we're gonna learn about the frontier, right? It is a lawless place on the outer rim. Life is harsh and cheap. I'm not going to dig too deep into the setting stuff because this is just telling us kind of where the world is set. I've seen all the movies. Maybe you have, maybe you haven't, but I'm more interested in what this game says with its mechanics than anything. But let's take a look at what the territories of the frontier are. I kind of like that it's giving us access to some stuff that the movies might not have. Like, for example, the three-world empire, right? The UK, Japan, and developing countries, the Weyland-Yutani Corporation itself is a result of the foundation of the three-world empire. Pioneering space exploration, controlling many long-established inner colonies. Keep in mind that technically, Blade Runner and Alien are set in the same universe. They are, yeah. Yeah, so Weyland-Yutani and the Tyrell Corporation, Weyland and Tyrell are, different parts of the timeline, but yeah, the same thing. Blade Runner is set way before anything happens in Alien, but Yeah, Wayland, there's a canon piece of information where there's a letter from Wayland that discusses Tyrell, and basically they split apart. They split on how to develop artificial people. Wayland makes androids that are easier to determine that they're not human, and Tyrell wants to make them more human than human, right? And there's a note in one of the alien movies. I want to say Prometheus, where they establish that there's a canon connection between the two. But all of this takes place well after that stuff. So the territories of the frontier are divided into the Three World Empire, the United Americas, that operate the Colonial Marines and the Colonial Navy, and then the UPP, the Union of Progressive Peoples, which is kind of our future space communists, right? It creates the 80s in the future. And then the ICSC, which are a bunch of independent colonies outside of control there. Yeah. So yeah, it talks about kind of who runs the universe, kind of what we can expect in it. That the universe is predominantly corporate dominance, and that because we are out on the frontier, people have turned to God. There's like a re-up of faith, right? Which I think is such an interesting part of the alien universe. And really, Covenant and Prometheus really leaned into that. Covenant especially. This idea that practitioners of the holy immolation, the Church of the Immaculate Incubation, that religion has kind of risen again as a strong factor in the future, I think is really cool. So that's something that'll come up thematically. So the game is set in the year 2183. 2183, which is 3 years after Aliens, right? 3 years after the disappearance of the Sulaco, 3 years after Hadley's Hope, the loss of the Colonial Marine thing. So it takes place considerably farther after the events of Prometheus and Covenant, and is slightly ahead of Aliens. So I guess it would be set before Alien Resurrection, before Alien 3, but probably not by too much. Yeah. So the what I love is that there is a question, and this is a question in the alien universe: how much do people know about xenomorphs? Right? Like how much is about how much do we know? And I love that they just lay it out here, right? There is a book by Robert Morse titled Space Beast, dealing with the aftermath on Furina 161. Is Furina 161 where... Is that where Alien 3 takes place? Yes, it is. Yeah, Furina 161, nicknamed Fury, is a barren, wind-swept world in the Neroid sector, classified area, and yeah, it looks like that's where either it's where Alien 3 takes place or it's mentioned in it. Jettisoned from the Sulaco. Yeah. Okay, cool. So that's the prison world, and it's so the only publicly made information about xenomorphs is a convict's book talking about the alien dragon that slew a bunch of people. Okay, cool. All right. So that's interesting. That lets us know kind of what we know, and then we get our little timeline of the universe. Nice. I like that. So this shows where all of this stuff takes place, right? Star Beast is illegally transmitted through the universe, and then here's where all of the Nostromo goes missing, and what have you. Nice. Okay, cool. Good. So, jobs on the frontier, right? Character. Now, this is things people in the universe do, right? They're colonists, they're truckers, they're Marines. They might work for the company, probably Weyland-Yutani, but maybe smaller companies. And then we get into the game. So we get, 15 pages, maybe a little fewer, of 12 pages of setting material, which is nice. That is a good amount of setting material. It's only what we need. and then not. This was a problem I had with Coriolis, where Coriolis had like 200 pages of setting material. I hope that the main book doesn't flesh that out too much, but gives us tools for creating LV426s or Hadley's Hopes, right? I want tools for creating my own stuff. I don't just want hundreds and hundreds of pages about the existing alien universe. I mean, I do want that. I really, really do. I want it so bad, but I don't want it in my alien RPG. I want a separate book for that, right? I want Shadow of the Beanstalk, and then I want Worlds of Android. I don't need all of that in here. I want setting info that I can use to create my own versions of this universe. So let's take a look. Everyone in the game except one takes on the role of a player, right? You decide what they do. Your job as a player is to portray your PC and imagine yourself in his boots. He's a person with feelings and dreams. Can we just use like a gender neutral pronoun? Is it so hard to use they? Like, it's your job as a player to portray your PC and imagine yourself in their boots. Like, for the love of God, like, if you're going to default to anything, default to she, because Ripley is a woman. Whatever. Come on, Modiphius. Come on, Fria Ligan. It's not that hard. Just go and replace it. It's not too difficult. The singular they is a completely acceptable and normal form of grammatical. Anyway, whatever. So the final player. Now, I guess this is kind of how they flip it. So the final player is the game master, the GM. She describes the alien universe to you. She's the game mother. Characters controlled by the GM are called non-player characters, or NPCs for short. The game is a conversation between the players and the GM until a critical situation arises. Then you break out the dice. So pretty standard stuff. The GM's job is to put obstacles in your path and challenge the PCs, forcing them to show what they're really made of. But it's not up to the GM to decide what happens. That's decided in the game. That's why you're playing the game, to find out how your story ends. Okay. Good. All right. So this is what we were talking about at the beginning. The Alien role-playing game has two game modes, cinematic and campaign play. And I think it's interesting that they have iconography. And I would like to call out, again, fantastic graphic design. Whoever designed these cinematic and campaign like buttons, they obviously studied the UI of the computers in Alien. Because that's what these look like. Nice work. So cinematic play emulates the dramatic arc of an alien film. It's designed to be played in a single session, high stakes, fast, and brutal play. Conflict between PCs is likely, and you're not all expected to survive. Charity to the Gods is included in this book. Okay, cool. More cinematic scenarios will be published in the years to come. All right. Campaign play is designed for longer continuous play over dozens of sessions. You create your own PCs. Oh, that's interesting. So part of cinematic play is you get to pick from a group of pre-gens, which totally makes sense, but you don't make your own character. In campaign play, you do. The core book supports 3 different campaign frames to base your campaign on. There you go. So space truckers, if you want to play Alien, colonial marines, if you want to play aliens, frontier colonists, if you want to play Prometheus or maybe Covenant. Interesting. I hope that space truckers, colonial marines, and frontier colonists are very different mechanically. I hope that there are very, very different mechanical pieces that go into each thing. I hope that the core rules are like 50 pages, and that each of these is another 50 or 60 pages of mechanisms. I want them to almost feel like different games. I don't know that they will, but I hope that they do. I want to know what a campaign frame looks like. Very curious. Yeah. And then note, source books and other supplements for campaign play will be published by Free League Publishing in the years ahead. So that's cool. Okay. So this rules, what we're looking at now, is only going to cover cinematic play, which honestly is the part I'm maybe the most interested in anyway. So that's great. So key themes of the game, things that I hope will be reinforced by the mechanisms: space horror. Every desperate breath into the rebreather may be your last. Sci-fi action, right? Robust mechanisms for fast and brutal combat, and a sense of wonder. Strange worlds, ancient incomprehensible artifacts on a grand scale. Humanity's place in the universe. All right. Okay. Interesting. So, what do we got? What do you have for us, game? You have character sheets. That's good. I'm glad. We need those. So, custom dice, even though they're just D6s. So the custom dice in this game will have a, there's two different kinds of dice, base dice and stress dice. Base dice have a little plus symbol on the 6 side. If you roll a 6, an effect of some kind is triggered. They have a face hugger on the 1. Rolling the face hugger triggers panic in your character. You can play with any regular 6, but any regular 6-sided dice, but you need 2 different colors, base and stress. Okay, all right. And then the cards. Whoever said at the beginning it's a free league game, there will definitely be cards. There is a custom card deck for drawing initiative and keeping track of gear, weapons, and vehicles. Useful, but not necessary for play. Okay, all right. Okay, I'm gonna skip over what a role-playing game is, though I do think it's funny they say if you've made your way here without knowing what a role-playing game is, congratulations. Here we go. Your character. All right. So in cinematic play, the player characters are already provided for you. In campaign play, you will make your own. Let's read this. This is sort of the mission statement for people playing this game, and I think that it's very significant. It's very important to have these because otherwise people will play a game like Dungeons and Dragons. By which I mean, if you don't tell people this is your job at the table during this game, right? This is your unique thing that you have to do. Keep this in mind while you play. These are the rules. They will just play like Dungeons and Dragons characters, right? Win the game, get as much XP as possible, kill the monsters, and move on. So what does this game expect us to do? And then, of course, the unstated prove it, right? How are we rewarded for this? So, your player character is the most important asset in the alien role-playing game. She is your avatar in an alien world. Okay, so now we switch to she. She is your eyes and ears out there in the deepest, darkest space. You munch on popcorn with friends and roll dice while she takes all the risks. There is an unwritten binding agreement between you two, and like any corporate contract, there's a catch. You live vicariously through her, and she is depending on you to keep her alive. Don't screw it up. Take your PC seriously. As far as you are concerned, she's a real person, and her fate is in your hands. No matter what you do, keep in mind your character's goals, hopes, and agenda. They may differ from your personal beliefs, but that's okay. You're playing a character, and this is a game. When a xenomorph looms over her, your character may be terrified even when you aren't. At all times, ask yourself, what would my PC do, and have her act accordingly. Trust us, you'll have more fun that way. At the same time, don't try to protect her from every conceivable danger. The goal of any alien game is twofold. Go on a suspense-filled thrill ride and create a damn good story. For that to happen, you need to roll the dice, both figuratively and literally. You need to take risks. I like that. I love the separation. I love it. It's like they're using, it's like the inverse of Apocalypse World. It's like treat your character as someone that is real but not you and have some distance from them. I love it because in a horror game, too often we try to ourselves feel scared. We try to feel our feelings that the characters would feel. But in this, it's like take them seriously and treat them like they are afraid even when you're not. I really like that. It's whether they know that they're doing this or not, it's encouraging director stance, right? Issue commands to your character, move your character around in a world, think for them, but don't think as them. Ask what they would do and have them act that way, right? I love it. It's really cool. It's the only way I think that you can make horror gaming work, and I want the systems to reward us for doing that, right? Here we go. Here's the answer to that question, and I think that we understand why we can play androids now. So the reason why I thought that maybe androids would be GM players only was that androids inevitably lead to PvP, right? You cannot trust, for the most part, You can't trust an android in the alien universe. You just can't. Because the game is about humans versus aliens, and it's about, honestly, a lot of Alien is about procreation. It's about make baby. It's about body horror, and androids can't participate in that. And mechanically, they are set apart from humans. So an android, they can't push their skill rolls. They don't suffer stress. They cannot panic. They get damaged differently, and they're kind of exempt from a lot of what makes Alien terrifying. In a way, they are secondary antagonists because they look like us, but they're not human. I'd love to watch a video. I want somebody like what do they call Folding Ideas, or somebody who is a better film and story analyst than me. I want somebody to make a video or write an essay about the portrayal of androids in Alien versus the portrayal of androids in Blade Runner. Like, how are they different? Because it's pretty subtle. No, so the thing about not being able to participate in body horror is that an android in Alien, if it gets its head ripped off, it's not dead. Primarily, body horror in Alien is about co-opting human, like, reproductive capability, right? Having our bodies hijacked and giving birth to monsters. Androids are not capable of that. As we saw in Covenant, David has to he has to use humans to husband his interest in the xenomorphs, right? That's the like horrific tragedy of Covenant, is what happens to David's like best friend from Prometheus. Like, he loves her and he can't impregnate her himself, and so there's a lot of biological procreational stuff in Alien that by necessity gets kind of gendered, but I think that Aliens especially does some good stuff about separating gender from sex in terms of procreative materialism. But whatever, we're not here to talk about gender in Alien. Though if I made a campaign, that would absolutely be a theme. Right. In a lot of ways, Ripley and Kane and the men and the women of the Alien universe, because we don't have any non-binary people represented in the Alien universe so far that I know of. But the men and women of Alien, they tend to either reinforce or undermine gender roles. And then they are equally susceptible, though differently susceptible, to the procreative body horror of the game. Because remember, the first facehugger gets up on Kane. Not on a woman. So anyway, whatever. There's some interesting stuff to be told here, and yeah. Anyhow, you can play an android, but I think the idea here is that androids, the game is going to embrace that potential PvP stuff that comes from androids by making androids not susceptible to the same stuff that humans are. Their story is fundamentally different. Anyway, the core stuff that makes up a character in the Alien RPG is their career, which gives you a special talent, gives you your background and your role in the group. So I think even if people share a career, maybe they'll be slightly different. We'll see. I don't imagine there are going to be any like, for example, the career. Here's the question: in Alien, does everyone have the same career? Is Space Trucker the career? Or is it like captain, engineer, navigation, etc.? Do the two schlubs down in the engine room, do they have the same career as Ripley? Right? What's Yaphet Kotto's career? So I guess we'll find out. So that's career, right? In Aliens, is everyone's career Marine, or do we break those down into smaller careers? And then your attributes, your basic physical and mental capabilities: strength, agility, wits, and empathy. Okay, strength, agility, wits, and empathy. How strong are you? How fast are you? How smart are you? And how much do you charisma? And then you have skills. We looked at the brief skill list at the beginning. There are 13 skills in the game. They're rated on a scale of 0 to 5. The higher the number, the better. I think you probably add your attributes to your skills. and then you roll a pool against a target number. I guess we'll see. And then you can be an android. Life in space is lethal. More often than you like, you find yourself under extreme pressure. Mounting tension is represented by stress. It starts at 0, and it can increase by pushing dice rolls and experiencing frightening or stressful situations. Okay. So the GM can tell you everybody's stress level increases. Maybe you fail a roll and you get more stress. You can also push yourself to gain stress. It feels like stress is a bit like a broader Blades in the Dark style like stress. And then you have health. When you have health, you get a number of health points equal to your strength score. Wow, health is low. Talents can modify it. When you suffer damage, your health is reduced. If it drops to 0, you're broken and you suffer a critical injury. Okay, all right. So you might be a team, but each individual PC has an angle of their own, a personal agenda. How they work is different between cinematic and campaign. Fuck yes. Fuck yes. I love agendas. Agendas are like goals, right? So the agendas are hidden in cinematic play. The GM gives them out and you do not share them with other players. At the end of each act, if you took an action to further your agenda, your stress is decreased and you get a victory point. Victory points. You can win. Oh, that's so cool. Secret agendas that as you play, you can win them, right? And you don't know what each other's agendas are. It's a kind of like murder mystery style. This is interesting. This is the reward thing. So you're rewarded in-game. You get victory points by pushing your agenda, and it's secret, right? So this is Aliens. Ripley has an agenda. The Marines have an agenda. Fucking Burke has an agenda. This is Alien, right? The crew has an agenda. Within the crew, the captain has one agenda, the crew has another, and the grunts have a third. They just want to get paid. They want more shares, right? Ash has an agenda. Bishop has an agenda, right? This is how we set characters apart from each other. Yeah, you can be the corporate mole. Yeah, I like it. And then we don't know how they work in campaign play because they're described in the full game, which we don't have. The Alien role-playing game is about a small group of people facing unknown and horrifying dangers. To survive, you need to find someone to trust, but make sure you don't want to turn your back to. But also make sure that needs to be retranslated, I think. So you have a buddy and a rival. You can only have one of each. Wow, there are not going to be that many NPCs in this game. A lot of the stuff that normally the NPCs would do, I think the players get to do themselves. So as a result, this game probably supports bigger groups than your average game. Fuck, I want to play this game now. I want to see if this pans out. So you pick a buddy and a rival. You can only have one of each. Your relationships are important to the GM, and they can use to create interesting situations. I wonder what other mechanical stuff buddy and rival can do. Now, in Coriolis, you pick a buddy, you pick an ally, and I think that you get XP for supporting them. So I bet you in this, you probably get rewarded for supporting your buddies and for fighting your allies. And it's true, if you think about it, the Alien movies have outside distant NPCs. Like, who's an NPC in the movie Alien? The company and Mother, right? The computer. Who are the NPCs in... Yeah, and the alien, right? Who are the NPCs in Aliens? Is Newt an NPC? Newt's probably an NPC. That's kind of it. Newt and the aliens. There aren't even any colonists. They're all dead. Right? In Covenant or Prometheus, I feel like in yeah, right. Jonesy is the Board of Inquiry. They're NPCs, but that's like a faceless group that represents Weyland-Yutani. Interesting. So it's nice that they recognize there's not a lot of room for NPCs, which creates isolation, which is instrumental to these games. Yeah. Okay. So if the PCs are filling NPC roles, they're going to fight, not physically necessarily, but okay. So in the Alien role-playing game, your PC can end up in direct confrontation. This is quite common in cinematic play, less common in campaign play. In cinematic play, it's up to the GM to call out when player versus player situation escalates beyond the point of no return. Oh, I like this. When the GM has called PvP, the players play out the current scene to its conclusion. After that, the PC who has turned traitor becomes an NPC and is under the control of the GM. The player in question is given a new PC if one is available. This means you should think very carefully before acting against the common interest of the group. Right, because you can't go back. Once we learn that Ash is against the players, once we learn that Burke is doing things just for the corporation, they stop belonging to the group. This prevents, I hate you and we fought, but I still have to be a part of the group. Oh, I love this. I love it. This is very cool. This means you should think very carefully before acting against the common interests of the group, even if it's in line with your agenda. It may cost you your PC. In campaign play, it's less common. You just need to work out your differences if you're going to continue in the same crew. Right, so campaign play is standard RPG shit. Cinematic play is, what are we going to do different to really make this feel like Alien? That's cool. We're basically getting 2 Alien games. We're getting Alien-themed space D&D, kinda, and we're getting how to make an Alien movie with like very, very like custom mechanics. This is very cool. This idea of like secret agendas that play into PvP, but PvP that doesn't last forever. So that way, when the GM is called PvP, you know somebody is fucked, right? Someone is probably going to lose their character. So you can play it to the hilt. You can be like, well, we've agreed that we're at PvP. We've reached this moment. One of us is going to die. Let's just give her, right? So this way, Ash's PC can be like, I grab the magazine and I ball it up and I jam it into your mouth and I try to suffocate you. And Ripley's PC can be like, I grab the canister and I pummel you to death with it. And there's no hard feelings because we've all agreed, like we've jumped in. I think the idea is there are standby NPCs, but the reason that you do this in the third act is this might be the last thing you do. And if you win, you get your agenda, right? Like if Ash's agenda is kill the crew and bring back the alien, then they would win the scenario, and that tells the end of the story, right? The company wins. And Ash's player is smart to wait until the xenomorph kills everyone except Ripley to go after Ripley, right? Plus, it's not like Ash's player doesn't get to continue to be part of the game. So in Alien, for example, Ripley makes a mechanics roll to bring Ash's head back to life to interrogate him. And then you notice that the person playing Ash gets to be like, all right, well, I might as well tell you about my agenda now because I can't get it. I don't win. I can't win anymore. So like now I'm going to play along for your story. And so he can be like, I had a secret mission and I had to bring the alien back. It's the quote at the beginning. I don't like your chances. He says that afterwards, right? After he's dead. Yeah, I love that. That's so cool. All right, so to survive in Alien, you need the right gear. Compression suits, pulse rifles, motion trackers. In addition to your normal gear, you have a signature item, a small item. Oh, this is from Tales from the Loop, right? A small item that is sentimental value and says something about your character. Dog tags, photo of a loved one, a cat. Right? I actually don't think Jonesy is Ripley's signature item. She finds him. She's the ship's cat. And then some situations you have a vehicle or a spacecraft. You might start with one. Those are explained a little bit later on. Supply rolls. So this is cool. How often you should make a supply roll depends on the consumable in question and the overall situation. And actually, so Dave brings up a point. So Dave has, I know as a player, Dave is in chat right now. Dave as a player has a fairly firm like line in role-playing games about hurt animals, which is why like the Unlucky Cat Tavern wouldn't show up in Mad Mage. So what's interesting, Dave, to your point, this is a game about human body horror. So it would be out of character to focus on mutilating an animal in this game because we're here to mutilate humans. Now, if somebody had a personal line or veil or a personal excerpt thing about pregnancy, for example, until the later sequels, but we don't worry about that. About, say, pregnancy or children or babies, you would probably at the beginning of this game want to be like, so, this is not the game for you. You probably shouldn't play this. Yeah. Right? Understanding a horror game's core stuff, right? You wouldn't play Tales from the Loop if you were scared of, like, kids getting in danger. You wouldn't play Vampire if you had a thing where blood, if you had hemophobia, right? You wouldn't play Vampire because blood's going to get described. This is important. This is why we, like, talk about this stuff in advance. If I ever play Alien with people, I will tell them body horror, specifically pregnancy-related body horror, bodily mutilation, organ stuff. All of that is going to 100% be in the game. People being burned with acid will probably happen, right? If those things are triggers for you, this is probably not the right game for you. Organ stuff. I feel like Prometheus is the movie that makes this the most, like, intensely focused in the forefront. And actually, now that I think about it, procreation is something that ties the Blade Runner and Alien worlds together. Who can and cannot have a baby is a very reductive way of determining who is a human, but it's a part of both universes. Yeah. Anyway, so for gear, there's something called a supply roll. So there are 4 consumables: air, water, food, and power. Every turn, and after every strenuous activity like combat or a mobility roll, you have to make an air supply. I love air supply. You have to make an air supply roll. If you succeed, someone at the table has to take out their phone and play an air supply song. If you fail, no one is allowed to listen to air supply for the rest of the game. All right, I'm done making that joke. So you have to check air every turn. You have to check water every day. You have to check food every day, and power is situational depending on the gear that you have available. In the world of Alien, you have to overcome more than xenomorphs. You track 4 consumables on your character sheet using a supply rating. The higher, the better. At regular intervals, you make supply rolls. For every facehugger you roll, supply drops by 1. When it reaches 0, you're out of that consumable. Interesting. So if everybody is on the ship, they probably all have a fairly high air supply rating. But if you put on a suit, now you have a personal air supply rating, and it's like, all right, you got to go out into space or out into this dangerous environment. You have an air supply of 2. Every time you do something intense, make an air supply roll, and your air supply starts to dwindle. Oh, that's so fucking cool. This is that torchbearer shit, right? This is like light in D&D. All right, we'll look at that in Chapter 4. Group consumables are like air on the ship. Yeah. For encumbrance, supplies of food and water count as 1 item each, as long as your supply rating is 4 or lower. Right. If it's 5 to 8, it's 2 items. It's how many big packs of air you're carrying around with you. And it only dwindles on 1s. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Air and power don't usually count towards encumbrance unless you are carrying an external air tank or a battery. Yeah. Encumbrance matters because now you have to care about food and water, right? An item designed as heavy as 2 items, taking up 2 rows on your sheet. Some heavy items count as 3 or 4. At the end of the spectrum, there are light items that are half a regular item. You can list 2 of them on 1 row. Tiny items don't count. If you can hold them in a closed fist, it's tiny. You can carry up to twice your normal encumbrance rating, but you have to make a mobility roll when you want to run or crawl. Oh, cool. So here's the link, right? You can carry more stuff, but if you carry more stuff, you have to make mobility rolls. If you make mobility rolls, you have to make more water and air checks. Yeah, that's so cool. All right, load me up. I got my flamethrower. I got my body armor. I got 2 extra battery packs. Great. Now you have to run away from the alien. You're making mobility rolls. You're huffing air, right? You get exhausted. You start blacking out. The alien jumps on you. Uh-oh, good thing you're wearing that armor, but now you're exhausted. Oh, that's so cool. I love that balance. That's really nice. That's quite cool. Yeah. Yes, Foldable Human, I do need you to talk about androids. I was just talking earlier about how I'm really interested in the way that Alien treats synthetic people versus the way Blade Runner treats synthetic people, given that they have an overlap in terms of their universe. Predominantly through the themes of procreation and how being able to squirt out a baby is what makes humans or not, versus it being a curse and procreation being something that is bad for you. Yeah, just something that a theme that I feel like it's there and I'm interested in it, but I have neither the time nor the bailiwick to do such a thing. So that's how it works. When you want there to be content, you just make demands of other smarter people and make them do it. All right, so let's get into the guts of like the role-playing stuff. And I think this is probably going to be the least interesting section of the game because this is just the resolution mechanic. But I am interested to see how failure or success might tie into stress. And I think in this game, those things are tied into like you panic as you fail. Failure creates panic, right? It's the game over man thing, right? That moment where the intense machismo of the aliens Marines, of the colonial Marines, falls apart is not recognizing the overwhelming foe, right? Because machismo against an overwhelming foe is machismo reinforced. They love being up against overwhelming foes, right? When they're like, 10 million bugs, I got my plasma rifle, I'm not scared. But it's when your plasma rifle jams that you realize you're probably toast, right? So sooner or later, the shit hits the fan. So let's see how that works. There are 12 total skills in the game. They're connected to your attributes. This is like a White Wolf style, like attribute dice plus skill dice. When you use a skill, you describe what your character is doing or saying, and then you add your skill level to that score, and then you roll. To succeed, this is the Blades in the Dark style thing. To succeed, you need at least 1 6. More 6s give you a crit. If you roll 1 or more 1s, you risk panicking. Which is interesting because the more dice you have, the more likely you are to panic. Right? The more dice you have, the more likely you are to, like, this number of dice chance of success, it's true for panic as well, right? Because a 1 and a 6 are equally likely to come up. But I wonder I think you can still accumulate stress while you succeed. Like, I don't see anywhere where 6s negate let's keep going. Let's keep looking because I'm curious about how that interacts. So if you roll no success at all, something goes wrong. You fail to achieve your goal. Elaborate on why with the help of the GM. They might even let a failed roll have further consequences to move the story forward, right? So failing forward is a thing. Failure must not stop the story completely. Even when you fail, there must be a way forward at a cost of time, risk, or credits, but there's still a way. The GM has final say on the consequences of failure. You have one last chance. You can push the roll. Oh, that's true. Only on stress dice is there a chance to... Okay. So if you... Oh, okay. I see how it is. Okay, let's review. So, if I have 2 strength and 2 close combat, I have 4 dice. If I have not accumulated any stress, I have no stress dice. However, if I have accumulated stress, I'm adding panic dice to the pool. That's what they're called, right? No, stress dice to the pool, which might indicate that I could freak out, that stress is getting worse. Okay, all right. So at 0 stress dice, you cannot get worse by taking action, but I bet you as soon as you start failing or other things happen in the game, you're going to start accumulating those dice. The more dice they are, yeah, they're rolled separately as part of a pool, and they don't contribute to success. They're just bad dice that sneak in to your existing pool. Okay, That makes sense. Being stressed doesn't make you more likely to succeed because they work backwards. I don't think that the stress dice have success on them. You cannot add success with stress. I think they're just there to fuck up your pool. They poison it. Yes. Yeah. I like it. Okay, cool. So your dice pool will get bigger the more stressed out you are, but you're having to add in these dice you don't want. But they add a 1 in 6 chance of you freaking out more. So that's why early failure in Aliens doesn't immediately result in game over, because that Marine has to accumulate more stress that will lead them to that breakdown, right? Game over, man, is the panic situation. We'll see how that works. Interesting. Okay. So you can push yourself. If you push, you grab all the dice that didn't show success and roll them again. Usually you only push a roll if you failed, but you can push to be better. And if you push, it increases your stress level, which means now you add an additional stress die to everything that you are doing. Interesting. Yeah, you reroll your traders, but it makes you likely to freak out. So pushing yourself builds tension to a point where you risk going into a wild panic or violent outburst. When you push a roll, stress level goes up. When making skill rolls, including your immediate reroll, you add a number of stress dice to your pool. Oh, okay. So say you are you're shooting your pulse rifle at an approaching xenomorph, and you have no stress. You're fine. You fail, and you're like, oh crap, I have to hit this thing. I'm gonna push myself. You re-roll, but now you're re-rolling and adding in that first stress die. If you roll a facehugger symbol, you risk panic. When you roll a stress die and a panic symbol comes up, you cannot push the roll and immediately have to make a panic roll, which we'll find out about on page 68, no matter how many successes you get. Cool. If your action is firing a weapon, rolling panic dice means you empty the magazine in addition to a panic roll. So if you are not stressed out, you will not run out of bullets on your first action. Cool. I like the abstraction of ammo. That's very nice. It's a good call. Okay, cool. So let me read through the example skill here for you, and we can talk about it. So Dina's character Nat is trying to repair the engines of the Miranda, which is behaving erratically. You don't want to have an erotic engine. That's not for this game. Nat is already on edge with a stress level of 2 from discovering the corpse of a fellow crew member, Reed, on the refinery. The GM says the repair requires a heavy machinery roll. Nat's strength is 5. Holy shit, Nat. Nat's strength is 5. She's the strongest human being she can possibly be. And her skill roll is 3, so she picks up 8 base dice. She adds 2 stress dice because of her current level. Despite rolling 10 dice, none of them come up with a plus symbol. Fortunately, neither of the 2 stress dice show panic, so she can push the roll. If the engines aren't working, the crew is screwed. This increases her stress level to 3, so she rolls 8 base dice, 3 stress dice. This time, 2 of the base dice come up with a plus, which is more than enough, and none of the stress dice show panic. She made it. This time. Damn, Nat. Damn. She is yoked. Yeah, she's ripped. Generally, NPCs don't push. They don't have stress. The GM decides when NPCs panic. As a rule, you have 1 chance to do anything. Once you've rolled the dice, you can't roll again. Let it roll. So once you roll those dice, you can't just be like, I try to fix it again with the same system. They're like, no, you have to find another way or give somebody else a chance. Something needs to change significantly. This is from Burning Wheel. This is the letting it ride. If you do something as a group, you choose who amongst you is best to do it. The others can help, which probably just adds dice. This doesn't apply in combat. Everybody gets their own rolls. External factors called modifications will give you plus or minus dice, including gear, how difficult a roll is, or help from others. Yeah, so you're changing your pool. Okay. Difficulty is just like in Tales from the Loop. You are either adding additional dice or adding additional successes required or removing them, I think. So let's take a look. Normally the GM doesn't assess. You just need 1 success or not. But if you want to underscore it, you get a +1 or -1. Oh, it looks like it's dice that go. So no matter what, one success gets it. But if it's really hard, the GM might say you're going to lose a couple of dice when you roll in. Yeah, and I think that it's nice seeing this become more of a mainstream mechanism, this idea that you are allowed to roll something once, but I think it only works, right? This one chance or let it ride, it only works if you pair it with fail forward, right? If you have let it ride and you don't fail forward, it means the game immediately stonewalls, right? You run up to the locked door. The xenomorphs are on your tail. The group hacker takes out their hacking tool and attempts to crack the lock on the door. They fail. This door is the only way forward. I guess it's game over, right? It has to be, you cannot try this again. Your hacking tool explodes in your hand, cracking the door just enough for people to get through one at a time. Who goes first, right? Yeah. The door opens, but now it refuses to close behind you. It has to be paired up with that. You can't have let it ride without also having fail forward. And I kind of think you can't have fail forward without also pairing it with let it ride, because if you allow someone to make another try to get a better result, it drains the tension out of it. And the game like this demands tension, like absolutely demands it, but it also continually has to have forward momentum, right? You can't bump forward. You can't go back. Forward might be bad. You might have to leave something behind. Right. I like that. Okay. So you can have up to 3 people help you on a roll if it makes sense. NPCs can help you. They can help each other. You can have NPCs act as groups. But honestly, I don't think there are a lot of NPCs in this. I consider one alien an NPC and 1,000 aliens to also be one NPC. So I feel like depending on if you're going for like what group or not, you'd want to decide what qualifies for one character, right? And then opposed rolls is just get more successes than your enemy. That's easy.